She was 12 years old when she ran away. No money, no family, no plan. In the 13th century, that should have been the end of her story. Instead, her story was just beginning. She would cross thousands of kilometers, master a technology unknown in her homeland, and return decades later to transform an entire region. Her name was Huang Daopo, and this is the story of how a runaway changed Songjiang forever. Huang Daopo was born around the year 1245 in a small village called Wunijing, part of the larger Songjiang region in what is now Shanghai, China. It wasn't a place of opportunity. Wunijing was poor. War and instability passed through the region again and again, and for most families, survival depended on labor, even the labor of children. From a young age, girls were expected to work. They farmed, they spun cotton, often from dawn until nightfall. But for many families, there was another choice, one born entirely of desperation. It was called tongyangxi. A poor family would give or sell a young daughter to another household. She would be raised there, not as a guest, but as a worker, with the understanding that one day she would marry the family's son. For the birth family, this meant one less mouth to feed. For the receiving family, it meant guaranteed labor and a future bride. Huang Daopo would be caught in this system. Like many girls, she was subjected to harsh discipline, endless chores, and treatment that blurred the line between obligation and abuse. And by the time she was 12 years old, she had reached her limit. She made the decision to run away. Legend has it she ran away in the dead of night. She hid near the river docks of the Huangpu River, waiting for the moment no one was watching. Somewhere in the darkness, she climbed aboard a southbound cargo boat. No destination, no guarantee she'd survive the journey. That boat carried her more than 2,000 kilometers away, all the way to Yazhou, in what we now call Hainan Island. For a 12-year-old girl, it was a one-way crossing into the unknown. The island was home to the Li people, renowned masters of cotton textile production. For centuries, Li women had developed techniques far more advanced than those used in the Yangtze Delta, from spinning and weaving to patterning and dyeing. We have no surviving records that describe Huang Daopo's arrival. What we have instead are clues. The Li people spoke languages unfamiliar to outsiders. At first, communication would have been difficult, if not impossible. But Li society was matrilineal and matrilocal. Women held high social status, and textile knowledge belonged to women passed down through generations. A young runaway girl, especially one willing to work, could be absorbed into women's production groups, and Hainan was no stranger to outsiders. For centuries, the island had taken in exiles, refugees, and migrants from the mainland. Life there was communal. Families lived in longhouses or extended households. It's likely Huang Daopo was informally taken in, adopted by a Li family, or sheltered by a group of women. It's there that she worked, sharing in daily chores and joining women at their looms. Huang Daopo learned everything she could. She studied unfamiliar tools and techniques far more advanced than anything used in Songjiang. Multi-spindle spinning wheels, complex woven patterns, methods refined over centuries. She watched, she practiced, and she learned through repetition until the work became instinct. For the first time in her life, she wasn't simply enduring survival. She had a place, she had a purpose. It's believed she remained in Hainan for around 30 years. In her early years, she would have focused on the fundamentals, producing cloth for daily life, for ritual garments, and for local trade. But as the years passed, she moved beyond repetition into understanding. In middle adulthood, she likely reached true mastery. She learned how the tools themselves were built. She helped make cotton gins and spinning wheels. She understood not just how things worked, but why. And with mastery came responsibility. She began teaching younger girls, passing down techniques refined by generations of Li women. By this point, Huang Daopo was no longer just a learner. She had become a craftswoman and a keeper of technology. In her later years, she would have been sought out for expertise. People came to her not just for skill, but for judgment. Beyond designing intricate patterns and using advanced dyeing techniques, she began to think like an innovator. How could tools be simplified? How could methods be adapted or combined to produce better cloth with less effort? And then the plot twist. In her 50s, sometime around 1295 to 1300, now under the Yuan dynasty, Huang Daopo made a life-altering decision. She would go back home. There's no surviving record that tells us why. By this point, she was no longer a runaway. She had social ties within the Li community. She was economically secure, and she was respected as a skilled craftswoman. And yet, she chose to leave. So why return after 30 years? Perhaps she never forgot the poverty of her birthplace, the endless labor, the inefficiency, the suffering of women who worked all day and produced so little. With the knowledge she had mastered in Hainan, she may have believed she could alleviate the suffering of textile workers back home. Or perhaps the pull was more personal. Songjiang was where her story had begun and where it had been broken. She had fled as a powerless child bride. Returning as a master craftswoman may have been a way to reclaim what was taken away from her. Whatever the reason, the decision was made. Huang Daopo boarded a merchant ship in Yazhou, sailing north along the coast towards the busy port of Shangpu near modern-day Shanghai. When she reached Wunijing and the surrounding Songjiang region, she found a place frozen in time. Poverty remained. Women still worked with these same inefficient tools, using these same slow methods. It was as if she had never left. Huang Daopo's return wasn't seamless, no pun intended. 30 years had passed. Where did she stay? How did she find food? Would she even know or recognize anyone? But she had something of value. Huang Daopo had expertise. The cloth she produced was better, her methods were faster, her knowledge was rare. It's likely she traded this knowledge, teaching, training, and producing superior textiles in exchange for food and shelter. And once she had a foothold, she did something remarkable. She shared everything. Instead of guarding her techniques, she gathered local women and taught them the complete Li textile process, step by step. But she didn't stop at imitation. She began to adapt. She rethought tools and methods to suit local conditions and local labor. One of her first major innovations was a foot-operated double-roller cotton gin. Instead of removing seeds by hand, a worker could now sit, press a foot pedal, and feed cotton between two rotating wooden rollers. These seeds were pinched out mechanically. Work that once took hours could now be done in a fraction of the time. She then turned to the spinning wheel. Traditionally, a spinner could produce only one thread at a time, turning the wheel by hand. Huang Daopo rebuilt the machine. Again, she added a foot pedal, and she engineered it to spin 3 spools at once. The result was dramatic. 3 threads produced in the time it took to make one. But perhaps Huang Daopo's greatest innovation wasn't a tool, but a system. In Songjiang, textile work had always been done the same way. One household, usually the women, tried to do everything. Cleaning the cotton, spinning the thread, weaving the cloth. It was exhausting and it was inefficient. Huang Daopo introduced a radical idea: specialization. Instead of every household doing every task, each could focus on just one. One household might gin cotton all day, becoming experts with the new foot-operated machine. Another could focus entirely on spinning, producing thread faster and more consistently. And another could specialize in weaving. By concentrating on a single step, households became more productive, more skilled, and more efficient. And just as important, Huang Daopo wasn't protective of this knowledge. She shared it freely. By teaching everyone the best methods, she created an entire community of experts. The impact of Huang Daopo's work was nothing short of an industrial-scale transformation for Songjiang. Women could spin and weave faster, families earned more, and Songjiang became one of China's leading centers for cotton textile production. A region once defined by poverty was transformed into an economic powerhouse. Cloth produced here became known across the empire as Songjiang cloth. In her final years, Huang Daopo's role likely changed. She moved from hands-on innovation to teaching, overseeing, and passing down what she had learned. But given her lifelong curiosity, it's safe to assume she never truly stopped experimenting, making small improvements, refining methods, imagining how things could work better. Her place in the community was now secure. This was a woman who had once fled in the night as a child with nothing, but she would come back and transform the place of her birth, becoming a respected leader. Huang Daopo passed away sometime in the early to mid-14th century, but her influence didn't fade. For more than 500 years, Songjiang remained the heart of China's cotton textile industry. Its wealth became a major source of state tax revenue. Temples were built in her honor, and today, Huang Daopo is remembered in textbooks, museums, and memorials, including the Huang Daopo Memorial Hall in Shanghai. But her true legacy goes beyond economics. Textile work was women's work. By making that work productive and valuable, Huang Daopo gave women income, independence, and dignity. She didn't rule an empire, she didn't command armies, but she changed Songjiang, and she changed millions of lives.